Welcome to Inspire Campfire, a podcast where ordinary people tell their stories of extraordinary adventure. These are campfire stories meant to inspire the rest of us to light the fire within, get outside, follow our dreams, and return to tell our own stories. Ready? Let's strike the match.
Welcome to the show. I'm your host, Scott Wurtzbacher. And today we're going to talk to two people who have always both loved adventure. They fell in love with each other, and then they quickly realized that having and loving kids didn't mean that they had to fall out of love with travel. So I guess you could say today's episode is one big love story. Kyle and Heather Ellison from Maui, Hawaii are with us today. These two might just be my personal heroes because together they're raising an adventure travel family based out of my personal favorite place on the planet. Kyle and Heather have learned how to prioritize travel as they understand clearly the rewards and shared memories they're creating with their kids. It's a lifestyle they simply wouldn't trade, and they're here today to share with us just how they've made it work. Kyle, Heather, welcome to the campfire.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
I love that intro. That's awesome.
Man. I mean, seriously, you guys are seriously my heroes. And I like, there's so much. I've been giddy all afternoon. Kyle, you didn't hear this, but I was telling Heather before we hit the record button, like this afternoon, I just realized that somewhere over the rainbow by Iz has just been like on repeat in my head over and over again. I'm just so giddy about talking with you guys from Maui. It's so cool. But you guys are an adventuring family, and I wonder if we could just set the stage for listeners. Can you tell us a little bit about who you guys are, about your family, and this adventure lifestyle that you guys live?
Sure. So I'm Kyle. I'm Heather. We've got three boys who are 9, 7, and almost 5.
Nice.
And yeah, I grew up out here in Maui, and I've lived here since I was 5 years old. Heather has lived here about 20 years.
About 21 years.
21
but I'm
years,
originally from Northern California.
And yeah, we just both love to travel, and that's how we met. We met at an 80s party at a mutual 80s party. She couldn't resist the straightened hair and jean shorts. And in at a mutual friend's house in Lahaina, which unfortunately, here on Maui, we went through the fires this past year. That house is gone now. But it was the very first thing we started talking about was our trips or upcoming trips. And I mean, that was 18 years ago, and it just hasn't stopped.
Yeah.
We're making it up as we go.
So what's so cool about your story? I mean, you guys, again, like said it in the intro, but you've always been adventurers, and like essentially most people, or I should say a lot of people, like once they have kids, it's like, okay, now it's time to kind of do things differently. And that has not been your approach. I guess I'm just curious, maybe you could share a little bit about some of the adventuring that you did before kids, and then that sort of transition, and maybe some of the adventures that you guys do now as a family.
So I went to cosmetology school at 18 years old in Northern California. And then I had met somebody there that told me about this work abroad kind of visa that you could get.
Yeah.
And she was going to Australia. So I applied for it, got it. My parents supported it. And I went to Australia for a year. And then moved to LA. And then during my time in LA, I was kind of in the hair and makeup industry, and I got a job in Fiji for 2 months.
Wow.
And I mean, Australia really kicked off the travel bug for me. And then going to Fiji was incredible. And then I decided I want to move back to Maui after living there for a little while. LA was just like 2-year stunt. So I went back to Hawaii, met Kyle then, and Kyle had went to college at Claremont McKenna colleges in Southern California.
Yeah.
And he studied abroad in Spain. And also lived in Greece for a summer and spent, backpacking the whole college years of Europe. So right when we met that night, it was, well, where have you been? Well, where have you been? And we're only 22 and 23. He had a planned trip to go around the world with his couple of his buddies. And they were going to start off in New Zealand. And I actually had a planned trip with a girlfriend to go to Bali, and go do the Gili Islands and Bali for like 3 weeks, and then come back to Australia to go visit old friends. And he was going to go to Australia after New Zealand. So we kind of made this plan to meet up. So we met up there, and then came back to Hawaii, and he decided to not go on that around the world trip with his friends.
I only made it 2 countries. I met a girl and only made it 2 countries.
Hey man, that's part of the love story.
You know, I had a round trip ticket back to Sydney and just never got on the plane.
So yeah, so that kind of fell apart, but luckily I had this adventure in me too. Like, okay, and we traveled road trip through Australia together, and it was awesome. So then it was kind of like, where to next? So we went to Central America.
Yeah, no, that was June that I decided to not get on the plane. And then by October, we were in Nicaragua and Costa Rica and Panama together. So it didn't really take long. It was just kind of this pivot into, I guess we're now going somewhere else with someone else, but we're still going. It's just
and what's kind of fun about that is, like, you didn't get on the plane. It's almost like I put my adventure on pause, but that's not what happened. You just decided you were doing a different adventure
with somebody else.
And that's what adventure is all about, right? You don't know where it's going to take you, and you go with the flow, and something big happens and you go, okay, this is what we're doing now.
Yeah. I mean, he did do New Zealand with his buddies, and then into Australia. And then we met up with him in Australia, and it kind of changed from there. But I mean, it didn't stop us. Obviously, we spent a month in Central America. Then, I mean, the hook was there. Where to next? So Maui was always our home base. And then we would just work really hard. He worked on a boat. I did hair and makeup for weddings and all the hotels. And we would just plan trips. We would actually leave for a few months. We wouldn't go for a week vacation. It was, let's save all of our money and let's go to Southeast Asia for 4 months, and then the next year, and then we'd work for the rest of the year, and then we'd and then our honeymoon was in South America for 4 months.
And the thing with that is, we, in a tourism economy like Hawaii, we would do a lot of seasonal work. You have these big fluctuations in when it's busy. And so for me, when I was working on a snorkel charter boat, the management would almost encourage us to take some time off because there wasn't enough work for everybody. And it was like, come back in the busy season. And so we would just leave for like 3 months, save up money, have a sock drawer full of cash tips, and just go. And I think a really important point too, and maybe I'm skipping ahead here, but people seem to be sometimes afraid to leave their job. Like, you'll get your job back. It's fine. Like, we would always leave, be like, I'm good at what I do. And I can they'll hire you back. You can leave for 3 months and then we would always jump right back into the same job we were doing before, because if you're a valuable person and they need you there, like, you can get your job back. It's fine. So, like I said, maybe jumping ahead, but,
not really, because I mean, I think a lot of this whole thing for you guys has been prioritizing travel first. And that has been sort of a principle in your lives before kids and now that you have kids. So I do think it's worth kind of exploring that a little bit. I mean, has travel always been a priority to you guys?
Absolutely.
Yes. I mean, hard yes.
Yes. And I feel like, I mean, I'm 41 now, he's 40, and it still is like it. I feel like we're not growing up.
Well, and I'm gonna take it a step back to what you originally said about, as far as I can remember, I was one of those weird kids that would grow up like reading the atlas and looking at maps. And I swear that, if you notice that your kid is staring at maps all day, they're probably going to end up with some travel bug, because like for me, it's that, looking at the map and then knowing what it looks like in person. And I've been there. And, when we would go to the continental US with my, family, when I would grow up, I'd be like, hey, if we drive 12 hours, we can get to West Virginia. Like, that's cool. It was just this, like, let's go see things. And that's when I was 9. So as far back as I can remember, it's been a priority of just this adventure. Like, what is out there?
Well, Kyle, that's such an interesting point because, like, if you like living in Hawaii, I mean, the islands are relatively close, pretty easy to kind of to hop around. And I don't know if you did a lot of that, but like, I'm guessing that like traveling from Hawaii, it's pretty much always a pretty big trip.
Yeah.
So, like, once you get somewhere, a 12-hour drive, like, no big deal, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's a minimum of 5 hours to fly anywhere,
Yeah,
and you're not gonna go for the weekend. Like, growing up, there was no you never heard of anyone going on a weekend trip.
yeah,
Where are you gonna go? I mean, I guess Honolulu or something, but, like, no, if you're gonna spend the money and you're gonna go for a couple
yeah,
weeks, and go for a while and then make the most of it. And I do say that growing up on an island, I mean, all roads lead to the ocean,
yeah.
and the ocean's beautiful and it's nice, and the beaches are great, but it ends at the beach. So, yeah, there's just a whole lot more to see out there.
Yeah, well, we're definitely gonna come back and touch on, like, living in Hawaii, but
Yeah.
I'm curious, like, for you, like, you talked about this, like, love of maps and traveling with your do you remember, like, the first big trip when you left the islands to go, like, anywhere? Do you remember kind of, like, catching that bug?
Yeah, I would go and see family. You know, my parents' family would live on the East Coast in Maryland, and we went there over winter one time, and it snowed, and that was the coolest thing ever. I'd never seen falling snow before, and yeah, and then we went on a few road trips. We drove from Florida all the way to Massachusetts, and my dad and I would go on road trips. I grew up playing tennis, and so we would that as I got into high school, that became kind of this weird, in hindsight, like really weird thing. Like, I would have a tennis tournament in Michigan, and then we'd book our return flight out of Seattle, which is not normal. They were like, "Well, yeah, we'll just drive from Michigan to Seattle and then do this road trip out of it." And that became kind of the normal thing. It was like, "Oh, we'll have a tournament in Phoenix, but then we'll fly out of Texas or something." So,
Yeah,
yeah, it just kept getting like bigger and bigger and more absurd with each one. Like, well, where can we drive now?
yeah.
That's totally impractical.
Yeah, I mean, so it's just kinda conditioning for you.
Kinda, yeah, in this yeah, but I mean, that said, I didn't when I studied abroad in Spain, my junior year of college, that was my first time meaningfully out of the country. Like, I'd been to Mexico for an hour and Canada for a couple hours, but, like,
Yeah,
yeah, so it really wasn't until I was 20 that I was traveling internationally pretty heavily, so
yeah. Well, and I for listeners and especially my friends on the East Coast of the US, I have to point out, like, you guys are the second people within like 2 or 3 weeks that I've talked to that live in this amazing place, but have mentioned making trips to the East Coast to explore like
yeah.
everything that we have here. So we do have some beautiful things here on the East Coast.
Well, I mean,
Oh,
and if
absolutely.
you wanna dig, like, deeper for a second, you know, I tell people all the time, what is the, like, philosophical what is the reason you go somewhere? It's usually to experience something different. It's to step out of your normal.
Yeah.
And yeah, you on the East Coast, you got all sorts of things on the East Coast we don't have. We
Oh
don't
yeah.
have freaking leaves, you
Yeah.
know? Like, yeah, it's uh yeah, so you're right.
And
Yeah.
your guys' history
Oh
on the
yeah.
East Shore,
Yeah.
on the East Side is incredible for people like us out
Yeah.
here, even West Coasters.
Yeah.
We like
Yeah.
coming to the East Coast for your history.
Absolutely. Heather, you talked about that first trip that you made when you went to Australia. I'm curious, like, what was your first like early experience with travel that sort of like piqued your curiosity? Was it that trip to Australia, or was there something early?
That would be the biggest, like, international, but since I got that driver's license, I was road tripping myself back in California. I would road trip I mean, it would be smaller stuff, but, 2 hours away, from my hometown at 16
Yeah,
years old. That was kind of a big deal at 16. We
yeah,
would drive up to Chico, California to the college towns and, like, go explore up there, or I had a girlfriend that moved away, and so I would actually take a Greyhound bus when I was, like, 15 years old and get in the bus and go from Sacramento to Reno by myself in a Greyhound bus. Looking back, I'm like, I don't know if I would have done that with my kids. But my parents, I think they just knew I had this lust for, like, kind of wanderlust at a very young age, and wanting to go see stuff and be in other places and experience other ways of life already. Like, even if it was just a cowboy town in the US, it was interesting to me. Uh,
yeah,
or a beach town in Southern California. We'd road trip down to Santa Barbara a lot because it was just I grew up in Vacaville, which is like Cowtown,
yeah,
you know, basic towns. So the beach towns in California seemed so incredible. So I feel like mine started in like high school.
So you guys kind of have this baseline, both of you guys, you sort of have this baseline of just like this willingness and readiness to go. And it's so awesome. I mean, and it shows in kind of like what you guys are spilling into like your social media and everything that you guys are doing to sort of promote this travel lifestyle. I want to go to like that transition period when you started to have kids, and kind of like if you could sort of take us into that transition and now what life looks like for you guys as an adventuring family.
So first I'll say we traveled internationally for about 5 years before we had kids. So we were going to each continent except Antarctica.
In our our last big trip before we went to Africa for 3 months, knowing that we were probably going to start trying to have kids soon. Yeah. So I guess that's just to preface it by saying we were already very comfortable with being uncomfortable, with traveling, with being, and so we had a pretty established baseline in terms of like being comfortable on the road, which was helpful. So transitioning and adding a child into that was not super overwhelming, because I feel like maybe for someone that didn't do that for a long time before, it's just a lot to take on at once.
Right.
So it really wasn't that hard. I mean, our kids are older now. I swear they're harder. I mean, babies sleep a bunch. So like our first big international trip with our son, we went to New Zealand when he was 11 months old. That was kind of half for a work trip, half for pleasure. And yeah, I mean, that's a 22-hour time difference. So it's really hardly any time difference at all, because it's only 2 hours, just a day ahead. And yeah, I don't know. It like wasn't that hard.
Well, the only thing, and we started small. So he was only like 4 weeks old when we drove, because we had him in Asheville, North Carolina. He was born there, because we left Hawaii a couple of times to move to other places just to see what it was like.
Yeah, we always come back.
We always come back though. But we road tripped from Asheville to Savannah. And that was our first little like.
That's right. Yeah.
I have to get out of this house.
Yeah.
So I think we were already had this baseline comfortable, awareness of road tripping and traveling. And then we tested it like, okay, that Savannah trip went well.
Yeah.
Next trip. So we would do like these little mini road trips, and then he got a job offer. Oh, and then we went back to Hawaii for that winter, and it just kind of worked out. I mean, the baby, it was okay. It was, you just keep them close. They have their mom and dad. And you just knew, you have two loving parents, and I'm meeting all of his needs, feeding him. He's in a warm bed every night. We can go anywhere.
Yeah. Well, and I think, to back it up before that, she mentioned that we moved to Asheville, North Carolina. We made that decision when we found out she was pregnant. And it was like, let's just, I feel like most people are probably smarter than we are in a way, where it's like, hey, let's hunker down and nest and like have some stability. We're about to have kids. Like we need to pick the nursery and like, let's get ready. And we went the full opposite. And we were like, let's quit both our jobs. Let's ship our truck. Let's drive cross country in the middle of winter, 7 months pregnant with no job, no house, no plan. But like at no point did we think that ever it was going to be any problem at all. It was like, all right, we'll do this. And then, so yeah, we arrived. So we drove cross country in winter. So she was 7 months pregnant. Yeah, we got there. Yeah, I mean, he was born 2 months later, and neither of us had jobs. We had nowhere to live. We didn't even have a lead on anywhere to live. We lived with her sister for like 2 weeks, and then found a rental, and it all worked out. So, I mean, we were road tripping pregnant, like we were road tripping into the child rearing journey, and just that was our on ramp, and then we've just flown off since then. So kept it going.
I mean, it sounds to me like it's a complete mindset thing, right?
Absolutely. I was just gonna say, I think we just have maybe it's a bit much of the everything will work out mentality. It might be to the extreme.
But it does.
I don't know, but it does. I don't know why. I think we're both just hardworking, solid people that we just like, again, the job thing, we know we can get jobs, because now that I've been a business owner and he's done many things, we realize seriously, it's really hard to find good people. So
understood.
So I think that mindset,
Well, it's like that, there's that saying, leap and the parachute will appear.
Yes.
It's almost like we get uncomfortable when we're packing the parachute back in. Like, we like the parachute out of like, like, okay, yeah, we're just leaping constantly. And then
Yeah.
when we're on the ground, it's like, yeah, I don't like this feeling. I need to be leaping again.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know, but it's how it's always been.
I mean, the mindset piece is huge. I think that's probably like one of the biggest barriers to people that feel like they can't travel with kids. And I know we'll get into that a little bit more, but I mean, I think that's got to be a continuous pattern that comes up for you guys over and over again. I'm sure when people are kind of watching the way you guys choose to live your life. So I'm curious, like now the kids are 9, 7, and 5, or
Mhm.
almost 5, I think you
Yeah.
said. What does the travel lifestyle look like for you guys now?
Whew. Um,
gosh, it's the same, working really hard, prioritizing where to next, but also obviously making sure we're meeting it's exactly the same, making sure we're meeting their needs,
Yeah.
which is they're in their school that they absolutely love. They do activities, so they're in sports, they're in things that they love, but they have breaks, obviously summer break, and then winter break and spring break, and they're travel parents. Just we get out, we finish a trip, and we're already where to next, and we're already working hard to get ready for the next trip. So it hasn't changed in that it's almost like you just want to show them it even more, um, because it's so cool to see traveling through their eyes. I remember when we were in Africa, I did right before we had our first thing, you start to get a little jaded I will say it does get some things about it gets exhausting.
Yeah.
Everywhere starts to look the same. You
Yeah,
hit that point.
you hit that point to where it's, I don't know, and then you have a kid and you're like, oh, I have to show you everything I already did. Like it's kind of like we had our turn, now it's your turn, and I want to make sure this is in you because it has changed my life and the way I look at people. I think about all the time, some of the places we've been, especially developing countries, of what they live through and
Right.
the way they live. I and it's changed me, being more grateful. I can pretty much talk to anybody across all religions, all countries, and I feel like I can connect with them in some way. And I'm like, I want my kids to be like this. I want them to be able to talk to anybody and have compassion for anybody, from all walks of life. And we need to instill this in it now.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
I mean, I don't think you necessarily need to do it. You can do that within your own community. But it's just really fun to experience with them what we love so much, and it's just
yeah,
seeing them love it.
100%. I mean, I think that's probably one of the single biggest takeaways that I've personally gotten from people that travel as much as you guys do is this sort of expanded awareness of the world and understanding and really just kind of being more open and accepting. And I'm just curious, like you just mentioned that for you, and then wanting to share that with your kids. Are you starting to see that show up for them yet?
Okay. Not as much as here's what's interesting.
Yeah.
Exactly everything that she said, and that's what we want for our kids. But then we find it's hard to not like stuff that down their throat, like
Right.
look at around you, look at how grateful you are. It's like,
Right.
and when they talk to us, it's like they're not getting it. But then what's weird is we hear them talking to each other or their friends or other family members. And it's like suddenly all the things that we wish that all the things we wish they were sponging. And when
Yeah.
they talk to us, they don't appear to be sponging it.
Yes.
Then it just comes out of them like months later. And you're like, oh, wow, you did actually retain that. And so like if we ask them about it, it's as if, and then it gets frustrating.
Yeah.
But then it just randomly comes out in other places. You're like, oh, wow, you did retain that moment. That is okay, good. So,
Well,
Yeah.
part of their job is to resist when it comes from mom and dad,
oh,
right?
yeah,
Yes,
exactly.
I
So,
think it's just
yeah.
a thing against us for sure.
Um,
And they still, they have a comfortable life here. So, I mean, they don't see some of these developing countries every single day, but I just think it's ingraining in them. I think it'll come out later. Like you said, it comes out later when we're home. 4 months later, they'll talk about it.
And to your question about the ages being different now, it's a little bit different. As she said, they are getting more into sports. We did homeschool for a year and a half, but now they're in a regular school schedule. So we try to maximize their breaks. They have the social element of wanting to be with their friends. So it is changing a little bit in terms of their ages as they get older. The other thing is, kids fly free until 2 years old. I would highly recommend people fly with their
take
kids.
advantage.
Fly as much as you can before your kid is 2, because and you usually won't even have to put them on your lap. The seat next to you is usually open. So, so that there's that element where we have 5 plane tickets now. So it gets a little harder. So there are a few changes on the logistical front with the traveling with the kids, but on the, the front of just the mindset front, no, not really. It's the same. If anything, we now have these like fellow humans in our house that have thoughts and opinions and memories, and you can actually share it with more meaningfully, other than them like drooling on your back from the backpack carrier or something, so it's getting cool in that way, and we can do bigger adventures and bigger trips and longer hikes, and so that's great.
Yeah, and like especially as they start to get older, I mean, you guys are parents that aren't afraid to allow your kids to go try things. And one of the things we talked about when we spoke on the phone a couple of weeks ago was just this idea that like in today's culture, a lot of parents sort of underestimate what their kids are capable of. And I wonder if you could just kind of talk about your experience with that.
Let me take that. Yeah, we say it all the time. Kids can do hard things, and they blow us away all the time with what they are capable of. And, we also say that specifically with hiking, but kids don't really get physically tired. They get mentally tired. They get bored. So he's got to keep them talking and keep them engaged. But they're like these little firecrackers of energy that can go and accomplish stuff that most adults have a hard time doing. And yes, it is hard. Like there's that fine line of you don't want to be delinquent parents that are letting your kids dangle off the edge and be doing crazy, dangerous things. But for me, I will usually make a quick assessment of like, will this lead to actual death or very serious injury? Probably not. We're going to go with it, I don't know, time and time again, we were climbing up this volcano in Guatemala where we have to hike up and then camp and get up at 4 a.m. and slap on headlamps. It's blowing 50 miles an hour and there's lava in the distance, just stuff. And even the guides were like, I don't know about bringing kids. And then the next day they're saying in Spanish, they're like, your kids are very strong. I'm like, well, yeah, I feel like maybe a lot of kids are very strong, but maybe they're not given the space to be strong or to show their strength or to show what kids really can do.
Yeah.
So yeah, we'll beat that drum all day that kids can do a lot if given the freedom to do it.
And like so Heather, for you, like is there like a balancing act for that? I mean,
for like what they can do. I mean,
yeah.
Obviously when we're hiking and there's some cliff drop off areas, I don't do that well with heights. So I'm putting my fear into them and I will absolutely back them away from any sort of cliff thing. So I find a balance in the obvious awareness of it is a child. Make sure the 5-year-old is not off the side of the cliff, right? I definitely have that sense of protecting your kid as well. I think it's just mother's intuition too, is like diving in it, getting in in Baja when we swam with the whale sharks, like the whale shark's not going to hurt my child. It's not a shark. So I felt safe doing that with them. And I wanted to show them that. And I was, they were right next to me. Yeah. So no fear whatsoever. And then we just snorkeled the backside of Molokini crater, which is hundreds of feet down. and even made me a little weary because you're in the deep, deep blue with my 9-year-old. But he was just snorkeling wherever he wanted. He was just going, but I was kind of following behind him. So I think there's that sense of the balance of like, you're still making sure they're safe, but also love seeing your kids do something incredible and epic. Especially the hike we just did in Norway over the summer, that the weather, we kind of a blizzard came and they were on this like 1,000 square foot drop off, and they were their vertical drop off that was kind of near them, and high winds. And yes, I was a little nervous, but there is a sense of like trusting your 9 and 7-year-old. There is some trust there too, that they will, because I've been watching them, we've worked our way up to some of these hikes that we've done. And I know they don't want to go over either.
Right.
So I watched them again, followed behind them, and I knew that they could make it up. And then when we all finished that hike, we all agreed that was probably the hardest one we've ever done. But the memory of that is absolutely incredible. And then seeing what you can do as a family when you're at your hardest point, and then pushing through and finishing something, even though it could have been hard or a little scary. It's just that bonding is just, you can't get it when you're sitting inside your house.
Yeah, no, I love that. And one of the things, like, I just heard you say something that it just struck me. And I think, like, you guys, are now in this space where you're encouraging other people to get outside, and you're interacting with people, and, again, kind of encouraging people to travel and giving people tips, and just like, in your interactions with people. I'm just kind of curious your thoughts on this, because I heard you say you were putting your fear into your kids. And I kind of wonder when people quote underestimate their kids, is that more them putting their fear into their kids?
Hands down. Absolutely. That's what I mean. We had a base going with travel since we were very young. There was absolutely no fear about getting on a plane and going anywhere in the world. There's another account we follow, and she says, if there's other kids living there, then kids can go there. That's kind of, her outlook on it. And in some sense, I absolutely agree with that. There's kids all over the world, and they're living and growing up into adults. That's how that country's surviving, because they do have adults. So those kids are growing up and they are okay. And so we are extremely comfortable in other countries. And yes, I think other people, because I don't know, I used to, back when we started traveling, no, there was not a lot of Americans traveling at all. Honestly, I think travel is just really starting to hit America in the last, 5 years, 10 years, that people are just finally catching on to this incredible
in
travel space.
Some of the weird places we were, but and to kind of bring it full circle with all of it here, I think, because it's a kind of semi-serious topic you're touching on with the safety and everything, is one benefit of spending this amount of time together as a family is you really get to know your kids. And I think that's very important in terms of allowing them what they're, can go and do. Like, we can let our kids go and do some people might think is some kind of sketchy stuff, just because we trust them and know them. Like, I know they can do this. If I take them spelunking through some cave in Belize to go back and see skeleton burial ground, they have to swim through this tight little area. And I'm doing that because I know my 5-year-old can do that. And if you don't know your 5-year-old to do that, then you shouldn't do that. Like, you shouldn't put your kids in a position that you don't know if they're going to be able to do, because that's actually dangerous. But by spending so much time together as a family and getting to know your children really well, you also get to know what they are and are not capable of. So what may appear, I suppose, a little extreme, it's more like a highly vetted intra-family moment where I go, no, I know they can handle this, and I'm going to give them this longer leash because I know they can. And then to the point of, looking up to your parents, I used to be a scuba dive master for a number of years. And one of the things that we would learn in our dive master class was, even if you're scared, you can't show it because all your divers are looking at you. So you got to keep it together, because as long as you are composed, they're going to be composed. if you as the leader are showing weakness, or that you're scared, or that you're lost, or that you're uneasy, it's probably going to it's going to take confidence away from them and make them uneasy. And I think the same goes for our kids. Look at us. They look at every detail we do. And yeah, so if we show that we're comfortable with the situation, I suppose it makes them feel comfortable. And if we show unease, they'll probably be uneasy.
Yeah, that makes sense. And actually, I think you're speaking to, I want to ask you a question. I think you're already kind of speaking to the answer, but this idea of people putting their fear into their kids, like as a sort of teaching moment for listeners and people that have experienced this directly, you guys, like, what advice do you have for people on how to not allow yourself to put your fear into your kids?
I mean, what is that saying that they have, that, what's the saying, courage isn't the absence of fear, it's the absence of giving into the fear, whatever that saying is, where it's okay to be afraid. It's, just don't let it consume you, And so I guess it starts with you. If you don't want to put the fear into your kids, don't put the fear into yourself.
Yeah.
To a point, of course. And I think it starts with us as parents. It starts with you. And it's a little bit of a pivot, but a lot of this travel has made us very adaptable.
Yeah.
And, there's an adaptability element of going, again, everything's going to work out. It's going to be okay, because when things are very fluid and you've been in all these situations, that, hey, it's going to be okay. It's going to work out. And that, I feel some people may tend to freak if things don't go exactly to plan. And then there's an anxiety in that. And then the kids pick up on that anxiety. Yeah, so having this adaptability encourages a greater calm. And
yeah, I like that. And I also really like what you said about like spending time with your kids and knowing your kids.
Mhm.
I think if you know your kids, like I mean, to me, that was profound. Cause like, if you know your kids, you know what they're capable of, it's going to be easier for you to trust that they're going to be able to handle these things. And, Heather, you mentioned mother's intuition. I mean, knowing like when it's time to sort of step in and,
Absolutely. Absolutely. Like our 7-year-old likes to kind of get a little close to the edges more than I'm tend to be comfortable with. He's just kind of that kid. And, so I try to give him a 5% little increase of like, no, he's got this. Like, but then I'm also very much so watching him. And so I kind of have a point where I'm like, okay, that's enough, but I'm going to give him a little bit of that leeway to prove to me that I can trust you around some of these areas. And I say that sometimes before we hike, like, I'm trusting you today on this hike that you will, you will you will go where it's safe, and you will go as far as you can. And then you need to stop when I say stop. So also that's one thing, is setting some boundaries with your kids too, and setting the rules before you kind of do some of your adventures. But mother intuition is there for sure.
Love it.
Probably there than Kyle.
Guys, so much of this conversation is just about like, for you guys, putting adventure first. It's essentially your first priority for your whole family. And I'm just curious if you could share for listeners some of your tips for like how you guys have been able to prioritize adventure, both from a time standpoint and from a financial standpoint.
Yeah. From
Time.
Start time. Well, from a time standpoint, like I said, right now we just starting out completely practically. Again, our kids are in school right now. They have a regular school schedule.
Yep.
We both have the benefit of being small business owners and are self-employed. And so that allows us the freedom to travel. We don't have to have PTO or have certain number of time off.
Sure.
And that, has pluses and minuses. So from the time element, we maximize their school breaks. And again, we were able to travel for 3.5, nearly 4 months without them missing really a day of school, just when you maximize those breaks. Now, the downside is that we're working on the road every day, taking phone calls, doing reservations, staying up late, answering emails, dealing with work headaches while on vacation. So that has its pluses and minuses. From a financial standpoint, it's just always been the prioritization of travel. It's a lot of people say, I can't afford to travel. It's like, well, it's not that you can't afford it. It's that you're choosing to spend your money on other things instead. And, we drive old cars. We don't own a house. We don't really spend money on really much of anything. We don't have nice furniture. I don't know, like
Yeah.
we just say, hey, I could spend it on that, or we could save it to spend on this. And when we do travel, we're not staying at fancy resorts. We're not like we go and do activities that are free. We go to the beach, we go and hike. We don't book every trip will do like one activity that
Yep.
costs money,
Yep.
but it's not, it's really not that much. You eat at home, you use gas at home. And to take it back to those times when we were working, before kids, I would tell people, and it was true, it's cheaper for me as a 26-year-old without kids to go to Southeast Asia for 3 months and not work than it is to stay here in America and work. Like, actually, like on a profit and loss spreadsheet basis, I will save more money and net more money in 3 months not working in a developing country somewhere traveling.
Yeah.
And so it doesn't have to be this expensive thing.
Yeah, there's countries out there that obviously with the dollar and exchange rate is not as big as somebody might
Or
think.
even like we went to Iceland and Norway, some of these countries that people are like, that's so expensive. How did you do that? Okay, well, in Iceland, they have tickets to Iceland for like $200 that you can get it. And then, we even flew over a bag full of camping meals, to like, we could eat at grocery stores. We don't go out to fancy restaurants. We don't get a bunch of cocktails and go on helicopter and glacier tours. I've got a 2-year-old. We go to the local playground and meet local families and and we go to the public swimming pools that are $4 and they're incredible. And there's no other tourists there. And we have a much more genuine experience than being on like a $300 horseback riding trip or
with a bunch of
something. I
other
don't know.
tourists. I
Yeah.
think you can get a lot out of not doing the tours, the very expensive things, if you want to travel with your kids internationally, and just being in some of these really cool towns and meeting actually local people. And then of course hiking is free. So there are ways you can,
we're a family of 5. We still do 2 queen beds and I sleep horizontal at the foot space.
Nice. So, I love that.
Yeah, like it is beyond an like the travel thing is like sometimes beyond an obsession. Like we will make it work. Like it's still that mindset of when we were 20, 19, 22, we will make this work. We will come back and we will work our jobs and we'll work our bums off. We'll work 3 jobs. I don't care. Kyle has 4 jobs. I have 2. We will work to make this life happen. And that is the ultimate, like prioritizing travel, in our opinion. And again, we're 41 and 40 and still doing what we did when we were 22 and 23.
Yeah, I love it. So I love you called it an obsession and said, we will make this work.
Yeah.
I can't have this episode without talking about the state of Hawaii where you live, because and I told you guys when we were on the phone a couple of weeks ago, I don't think I've been as many places as you guys have. I've been to a lot of places. There are so many beautiful places on this planet, and, so grateful for all the different places that I've been. And when I talk about places, there's, I like this place and I like that place, but Hawaii and Maui in particular is a category all of its own. It's like, it just stands above the, and so for me, I see this family that gets to live there. And it's, the question is really like, why would you ever want to leave? And I love this conversation. And I loved the answer that you gave me when we talked about this, but I'd love for you to share that with listeners. You live in this beautiful place. Why would you ever want to leave?
Well, I grew up here, like I said, and I've been getting this question for 35 years. And what's it like to grow up in Hawaii? I go, well, I go to school and I go to soccer practice and I do homework and, sit at home on the weekends. We're not like, watching sunsets and, anytime you live somewhere, you're not doing the touristy things, And I suppose that there is this, there's this different mystique to a place when you're there on vacation and it's this like distant destination. Whereas when you live there, well, it's just home, That said, we do love our homes. Why we keep coming back. We know we're very fortunate to live here. The mindset, the people, the weather, the environment, the beach, the outdoor adventure opportunities. But why we choose to leave is, again, for us, it's it's just the lure of elsewhere. It's not the discontent of where you are. It's not the need to escape. We love it here, but there's so much more to see. It's this inquisitive, like, what else is out there? And then also, I mean, for our kids, I want them to know more than surfing and boogie boarding. Like, know what it's like to be in the go mountain biking, go rock climbing, you know, go snowboarding, go skiing, go scuba diving with different, you know, animals that we don't have, different marine life, and experiencing elements of our world that are not here. And I think and again, you talk about the expanding horizons, you talk about the just all the things that come along with being in other places. Even when you live in this, what many people feel to be this utopian, idyllic paradise, in a way that can pigeonhole you into this very narrow, this narrow-mindedness where your world is not expanded very much. And I grew up with a lot, and it's not to say it's a bad thing. If anything, we could probably use a little more contentment in our lives of being okay with where you are. There's nothing wrong with that. It's
Yeah.
enviable. But I also, you know, I know a lot of people from growing up, or you meet people who have like left the island twice, and that's all you know. And for our kids, I want them to know more than just the beach and this one island. And again, there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
It's just what we enjoy.
I think,
Well,
yeah, it comes down to what we enjoy and what
Yeah.
it's done for us.
Yeah.
But I agree with him. The people that can not go anywhere and they're perfectly content, it is very foreign. And I definitely go, wow, that would be nice at times. But we try to do that. And then a couple months go by and we're itching.
yeah.
So
Well,
I've learned
you
to
know,
accept it about myself.
if anything, like there's a pretty awesome realization that I see in talking to you guys. Like, you clearly have an appreciation for where you live. And we talked about this a couple of weeks ago, and just to reiterate, I think you've already said it again here. I mean, just because you have this curiosity about seeing other places, it doesn't mean you don't appreciate where you live. And I see, you know, this amazing, beautiful place where you guys get to live. But yet you do have this curiosity, and it's honestly really just a validation that, you know, life is not about like seeking out utopia so that you can just settle down and say, okay, I'm done. It's about that like expanded awareness and constantly growing and learning and experiencing. Like, it is truly about the journey. And you guys are like, honestly, like shining examples of that.
Well,
Oh,
thank you. And you know, to go one element deeper on it as well, one of the reasons we keep coming back to Hawaii and people say what it's like to live there,
Yeah.
it's our community here really aligns with this kind of mindset that you're talking about, where, I mean, just to throw the cliched out of like the keep up with the Joneses type thing doesn't really exist as much here. The you know, the hustle, the grind, the corporate, the whatever it may be, you know, we see all the time people move to Maui, the island spits them up and chews them out, and they leave in 2 years because it just doesn't fit with who they are. And that's fine. But the type of people, I suppose, who choose to live in a place like Maui are relinquishing a lot of many of those aspirational elements of what many mainstream society is telling you to do and be. And so our mindset kind of flourishes in, like, here it seems very normal, I suppose.
Yeah.
Doesn't seem that strange. So
yeah, the way we live, there's many other people we feel like that do have this sense of wanting to explore and see other things. I mean, they made their way out here from the
Yeah.
mainland. And then the island culture, of course, we love. So you feel like you're kind of traveling even in your everyday
well,
space.
it's I mean, having grown up here, it's very cool living in a place that is, well, say technically part of the United States. It's not. That's for another episode. But it is, you know, growing up around indigenous culture, where there are other languages, where you're a cultural melting pot. There is no ethnic majority. You know, all of that is also, I think, very healthy for kids to be raised in. It's a good culture to be around. So
Yeah. Yeah. So guys, one thing I want to talk about is that you guys are building a brand. Go outside and explore.
Yeah, we're working on it. Yeah.
Yeah, and you have a quite a large following. It's really awesome, and I'm just curious because you know travel is a priority. It's the experience itself, but yet just like with this podcast, I mean, our mission is to help people listen to the voice inside that calls them to adventure and encourage them to get outside. And I think you guys are kind of doing the same thing with this brand that you're building. And I'm just curious, what is it that compels us to want to share these experiences with others?
Well, we think that being outside in nature is healthy, and we have been very careful and adamant through all this, and we want to be very transparent that like a lot of one of the reasons why we are doing this is not to showcase our own adventures. We're not
Mhm.
trying to be like, "Oh, look at what we do. Aren't we cool?" We really are doing this because we're trying to show other families or other parents to be like, "Hey, look, like this is what's possible. These are places that you can go. Here's an idea of what you can do," because we just know that, whether it's social media or screens or video games or being indoors or just like this generational and cultural shift in child rearing in this digital age that has its pluses and minuses. We just really want to be this voice of like, hey, just go outside and explore with your kids and go and do that. And here's an example of what we did, but it's not a one-way discussion. We always try to engage with people and say, what are you doing this week? And tell us about where you are. We want to learn about your adventures. And we found that there's a pretty large community online and just of people who feel the same. So we just want to be transparent that it's not like, look at what we're doing.
Well, and I always say it's kind of where Go Outside and Explore kind of came about was during COVID. People were all inside, and I started just simply posting a couple pictures of our hiking that we were doing on Maui. And a couple of my friends were like, "Where did you go? What did you do? How long was that hike?" And I started going like, this might be valuable to other people. I don't like that all these kids are sitting inside and this COVID thing, and you can be outside, and this isn't right for little kids. And so I was like, maybe I should create an account. And I love travel, and we have so much knowledge and so much passion for it that I was like, we need to put this down somewhere, I don't know. And so we were I love the Patagonia's never stop
Exploring.
never stop exploring. I wanted that, but he took it already.
Is that
And
Patagonia or North Face?
Is it North Face? It might be North Face actually. But I loved that. And so we kind of piggybacked and, Google search GoDaddy, go outside and explore. And we found that. And I'm like, that's exactly, I feel like I say that to my kids. Like when they're inside and they're cooped up and my boys are getting wild, I'm like, go outside and explore. Just go.
Go build a fort. Go play with a
go
stick.
outside.
Like we don't have a TV. We'll literally tell them go outside and play with sticks.
Yeah.
Because that's what they should be doing. They should be outside playing with sticks.
Yeah. No, I love that. When we spoke a couple of weeks ago, it was like go outside and explore was kind of like a double meaning. It could be like, yes, go travel across the world and see the world, but it could also be just go outside and explore.
And that's what I wanted. That's what I ultimately wanted, because let's get serious. I understand people live most people live kind of paycheck to paycheck in their life, and life can be challenging. And so again, traveling, you start to, see the world, you have this compassion for others. And some people, the reality of getting on a plane and going far is not theirs. So I wanted to make it really just about finding your own backyard as far as go outside and explore, whether that's outside or a national park. There's everybody lives near a few hours or a road trip away from a national park, or state parks, anything. It doesn't have to be as extreme as international travel. And you can camp. Camping is so inexpensive. Once you get a couple gear items, you can find those things on Facebook Marketplace. So it was kind of this just like encouraging moms and other families and dads, whatever is out there, to just, you don't have to sit inside during COVID. You can go do things. So kind of blossomed. And then we were traveling so much during that time. We even left Maui for 15 months and traveled full time with our kids, homeschooled, the whole thing. So we were posting then, but now we're trying to kind of grow it into a full on travel site with a blog, and we have big dreams for it. So
we also have, like she mentioned, about 6 different jobs and 3 kids and not a lot of time. And so we're doing the best that we can. And yeah, again, we want to be totally transparent again on the build a brand, a travel brand thing. Like we touched on it earlier. We didn't invent some app. We're not independently wealthy. We struggle to pay bills. We are like, we're not wealthy. We're not rich. We don't have some hidden path. We don't have family help. Like we're just figuring it out, and it's like, yeah, if we can figure it out, you can figure it out, and it takes a little bit of effort, and there's times it'd be hard, but it's just, like I said, our priority that we do. So
Yeah. So how can people find out more about you or get involved with the brand? Yeah.
So obviously our Instagram account, Go Outside and Explore, is the handle. We are starting our blog right now that I am working at. The website's up, so you can go to gooutsideandexplore.com. I will be adding more and more and more. That's kind of the goal this year. And to continue kind of sharing anywhere we go, all of our tips. Kyle is amazing at remembering everywhere we go. So he's really good at itineraries, and geographically, where to go. I always say he could even start a podcast and pick any country in the world, and he'll tell you exactly where to go and what you should do in that 10-day itinerary. He's just really phenomenal at it. So I also thought, like, you should put this down on paper somewhere, all your itineraries, because I think that's part of the fear when somebody wants to go somewhere, or they're overwhelming, is where do I even begin if I want to go to another country. And talk to him for 45 minutes and you'll have very strong idea of where you should go in that country.
I'd say right now, reach out on Instagram. I Go Outside and Explore. Send us a DM. We always enjoy talking with people. And if we ever get the bandwidth in our lives and time to build it out more, well, then you'll see us there too. So
there you go.
And again, I was a travel writer for 10 years. I had a travel blog. I started in 2006. I wrote 3 guidebooks. And so this, again, is kind of a continuation. I was a freelance travel writer for nearly 12 years. And so this is a continuation of, again, what we've already been doing, just under a different brand and our own brand. So,
yeah. Well, guys, as I sit here and I get to know you and have this conversation, from the very beginning, both of you have had this mindset of, and you said it, everything's going to be okay. We're going to figure it out. And it seems like that you've had that mindset your whole life, and you're just continuing to expand and grow on it. And I'm just curious, like, I think maybe there are people that have the awareness that know they don't have that mindset. Maybe there are people that don't have that awareness, but for those that have the awareness that they have not yet developed that mindset, is that a mindset that can be developed? And if so, like, what are your suggestions on how to work on it?
Go to a Tony Robbins.
Yeah. Nice.
Honestly, I did it.
Yeah.
He's got a great, I'm not going to lie. He's
awesome. I've been to UPW. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yes.
Oh, yeah, it's amazing.
Yes. So I did that for other reasons. It was kind of after the fire. I had a lot of like, why us? Why did this happen?
Yeah.
And actually wanted to start this Go Outside and Explore thing, but always did the, like, I'm not good enough. I'm not smart enough. I don't know how to write. I had kind of that in my head, but it was something I really wanted, but I'm going, what is stopping me? So I did his free summit course, the free one. And then I went ahead and signed up for the UPW, and I did the whole Zoom thing, and that will shift your mind. I'm not going to lie. But what was so funny about that course is I learned a lot, and it was fantastic. But one of the things a lot of people were saying they struggled with was that they needed consistency, and to know that everything, they go to the job, they need to know their salary, they need to know where they live. And all of them wanted the other side, the adventure side. And that's what they struggled with. A lot of them, I would say 90% of the people in the group that I did all the group chats, they all struggled with wishing they could be more adventurous, wishing they could step out. It was the comfort zone. And I'm sitting here like, oh God, I'm nothing but adventurous. I need to be more stable. I need to be more financially this and that. And it actually made me realize a gift that I didn't know I had, that I am adventurous. And a lot of people actually thrive to be, not in their comfort zone all the time and think they need that perfect job and the perfect house and the great car. So that was wonderful. But that course he does help kind of change. It's a mindset that you need to stop telling yourself that you are this and that, and stop telling yourself the stories that you've been told maybe since you were little.
Well, and I think it comes down to everyone's individual risk tolerance. A lot of it is, and maybe your risk tolerance, check in on yourself, on your own risk tolerance. And is it someone else that's creating that risk tolerance for you? Or is it actually your own? And do you own it? Or you're like, you know what, actually, I could take on a little more risk and I own that and I'm okay with it. And we're probably pretty far on the spectrum in terms of the risk tolerance. I mean, we never really know where our money's coming from more than a month or two out. Like, I don't even know if I'll have a job in 2 months, and we're planning trips to Finland. I don't know what we're doing. And it's like, that's not super
normal for a lot of people.
And I probably shouldn't be doing that. But again, we're like, it'll all be good. It'll work out, So
far.
It's worked out because we have that risk tolerance. And so I would tell people, check in on yourself with like, maybe I could get out my comfort zone a little bit.
Yeah.
And if you aren't comfortable with that, like, that's cool too.
Yeah.
Be you, like, just align with who you are. And if you want to do that, then do that.
Yeah.
That's great.
I love it, guys. I love the life that you've created for yourself, the life in Hawaii, but the life of travel, doing it with family, doing it with those that you love. I mean, this really is a love story. And Hollywood loves a good love story. At some point, they're going to want to make a movie about you guys and your life. And I want to know, when they do, who's going to be the actor and actress that's going to play you guys in your movie.
We got like 2 completely different people, which just
Who are you? Who are you?
The only person that comes to mind, and I don't know why, is I've always been told I look like her. So I kind of went to the visual thing, was Sienna Miller.
Sienna Miller. Okay.
Yeah, because people have told me in the past that like, you look, I've been told that. I've also been told I look like Cameron Diaz. So I kind of went with the like,
okay,
looks like me.
Love it. I love it.
Yeah.
Kyle, how about you?
Everyone tells me all the time that I am Will Ferrell. So it's got to be Will Ferrell.
Oh man. Okay. I love it.
He's got 3 boys. I don't like, I just like, people say like, dude, you are Will Ferrell. So
I love it. Is this going to be a comedy?
I know.
Our life is a comedy. Our life, it's
comedy.
a comedy of errors. It's a comedy. Yeah. So, I mean, if you're listening out there, I had a solo dad road trip across country one time that basically was the script of Old School 2. You ever make Old School? I got the script for you. It was the script we did cross country. So
amazing. I love it. So what's this movie going to be called?
Well, I don't know.
Okay.
Our movie?
The movie about your life. What's the movie about your life going to be called?
My first thing is Tim McGraw's song "Live Like You're Dying."
Ooh, Live Like You're Dying. Okay.
Yeah, that would be like, that phrase just hits me. So
Live Like You're Dying, Sienna Miller and Will Ferrell. I mean, sounds
Yeah,
like a pretty good movie. I love it. Well, guys, I want to thank you guys so much for spending some time with me today. This has been such an awesome conversation. And for those listening, I hope you've been inspired today as much as I have. I hope Kyle and Heather's story has encouraged you to listen to the voice inside that calls you to adventure, because we want to hear your story next. If you have a story to tell or just need a nudge to create one, please send me an email. We'd also appreciate it if you'd help us spread the word by leaving a review and sharing or tagging Inspire Campfire in your social media. And until next time, I want to encourage you to get outside. Thanks for listening. Kyle, Heather, thank you guys so much for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Enjoyed it.